All right, guys. So it's interesting because I recorded this last, but forewarning, I'm going to be talking about The Killing Moon. If you have not read this book and you do not want to read, and you do not want any spoilers, don't watch this video because I'm about to get deep into it. I'm going to be really talking about it, and I am going to reference things that happens later on in the book as I talk about it, as I break it down chapter by chapter. Today I'm going over chapter 1, and then I don't know, I might do multiple chapters in one video. It just depends on how long these videos go because I can talk. But I hope you enjoy. Alright, so I haven't really been reading. Been a little bit of reading slump, so I decided to reread one of my favorite books, The Killing Moon, and I'm gonna really get into it. I think I'm gonna talk about it on my podcast. So I'm gonna read a little bit, let y'all watch me read a little bit, and get into it. Ooh, matter of fact, it's everything about this book is amazing to me. Everything. I read the author's note. I have stuff underlined. I don't know if you can see that, but I have stuff underlined in the author's note. What I have underlined in the author's note is when she said, "My goal is to give homage. My goal is not to ape reality." I won't say this book is based off of Egyptian mythology, but it's heavily influenced by Egyptian mythology. So, oh yeah, the quote that kind of set it off is, "All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible." T.E. Lawrence, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom, Triumph. The note I put in here is I need to read that book. Also, facts. We rarely remember dreams we have when we're sleeping, but what we dream about while awake fuels our ambitions, and if we want it enough, it makes it a possibility for both greatness and evil. Some of the most vile experiments made modern day medicine what it is, etc. So that's just a thought I had. And then, I'm gonna just say this and I'm gonna get into reading because, In the dark of dreams, a soul can die. The fears we confront in shadows are as reflections in grass. It is natural to strike a reflection that offends, but when the glass cuts, the soul bleeds. The gatherer's task is to save the soul at any cost. Wisdom. And then, right after this, in the dark of waking, a soul has died. Its flesh, however, is still hungrily, savagely alive. The reaper's task is not to save. So already, in the very beginning, in the first 2 little paragraphs of the beginning of the novel, of the first chapter, it sets it up. You have 2 opposing forces. You have gatherers whose task is to save souls, and then you have the opposing force, the reapers, whose task is not to save souls. What is their task? We're going to get into it. But I'm going to read some of this, and then I think that's all I'm going to do today. night, and oh my gosh. So I finished the first chapter, and oh my gosh, that is a lot. I was annotating as I was reading. That's why it took me a little bit longer to read it than normal, but that was a lot because I've read this story before. Nothing is new. But as I'm reading it back, because I already I already know how it ends. I'm really getting the Easter eggs or the little foreshadowing, foreboding that, you sort of realize what they were referencing, but it's a little bit different when you're like rereading it from the beginning with the knowledge of these things. So like early on, like before I like really started sitting down to read or whatever, I pointed out the two quotes, the two opening paragraphs or whatever, how you have two different entities, the gatherers whose task is to save the soul at any cost, any means necessary, and then the reaper's task, who is not to save the soul. And so this is what I love about her too, because it's so like, I love how she does this. So in the opening chapter, we meet Ihuru, who is a gatherer. You learn that he's a gatherer, like as the first chapter progresses or whatever. So on one hand, he does two gatherings. The first gathering goes smoothly. It's like perfect. The person is clearly a citizen of the city. The person really believes in the culture and the religion or whatever that is going on, because gatherers are a form of priests in the story. So the person like goes willingly. Gatherers literally kill people. It's like a mercy killing. So gatherers perform mercy killings in this world. So that one goes good. And, he leaves the gathering. He has a sense of like peace. But there are little tidbits for stuff that's going to come. And I don't even know if I want to talk about, because like I'm clearly going to spoil this because it's a reread. But I don't want to spoil it too much just in case you haven't read it. And in which case, like, go read it. So after the first gathering, he's drunk off of dream blood or whatever, which is like a foreshadowing that perhaps this religion, this practice that they do, might not necessarily be as pure as they believe it to be. It notes that if he were younger, like he would have just did this gathering and like went off and then continued on the next day, like one a night. But now that he's older, now that he's gained experience, he can do another gathering for the greater good of Gurari. I hope I said that right. And like you learn a little bit about the culture of this land, because there's things like not even the poorest man in Gurari capital went without some ornamentation. So clearly this is a city that's doing well, that is thriving. And so he travels to like the high caste district, and if nobody walks around this place without bling, I like really would love to know, like really get a visual, a movie of this city, because like it has to be beautiful within itself. But the high caste place, like, got to be on some like palace types. So anyways, here's where the vibe is a little bit different. Like in the first half of the first chapter, the vibe is very calm, it's peaceful. It's like you can feel the incense burning as like, he lulls the old man and like carries his soul into like their version of heaven. And this, like, it's a little bit, you get a little bit more of the other side of this culture or whatever, because he's like, days before he had investigated the guest house. So clearly the people that he's going to mercy kill don't necessarily always know that they on a list. You also get a few hints of what is to come, because there's a lot of talk about how Hananja, who is, I guess, the creation goddess or the goddess that they worship or whatever, how she normally does not choose people that are not of that land, of that culture, whatever. She rarely bestows this blessing upon foreigners. In the first, go back. So in the first mercy killing, we're just going to say MK. So in the first MK, yeah, you get the gist that gatherers, when they come, they would rather for their peoples to be asleep or whatever. But like, you know, the old man was of the culture, so he knew what was going on. He was happy with it. He made peace with it. He welcomed it, as old people tend to. Here, already the vibe is different. So he comes, the man is already like deep in sleep. He's deep in a nightmare. When he goes into the nightmare, like he sees dreamscapes. He notes that the man, like, from where he's from, they put a lot of emphasis on wealth. So while this country might not be poor, they don't really empathize wealth, even though they do have a little vanity. The hypocrisy. But I digress. But pretty much he talks about how like his greed has coalesced into like this hunger, and it's reflected in his dreamscapes where they have great yawning, like there's like a great yawning pit in the earth, and its walls are lined with countless disembodied groping hands, like, you know, some horror movie type ish. And Ihuru, like, you know, he's used to nightmares. They're pretty much trained around dreams in this country too. And he finds, you know, his target at the bottom of a well of weeping hands or whatever. And it's funny because like as soon as the dude Bromarte notices Ihuru, like it's like he forgets this horror stuff is going on. He's like, wait, who are you? What are you doing here? And Ihuru's like, you know, consider giving him like, you know, his government or his soul name in this story, but he decides against it. He's like, Ihuru. And Bramante is pretty much like, he calls him he calls him a word that translates to demon at the end of the chapter. You know, Ihuru dismisses it, like they consider, all right, throughout the story, depending on what land you're from, they consider people of other lands barbarians. Like they believe, like other people that are not from of Hananja believe that the gatherers and the people of Hananja that follow Hananja are barbarians, that gathering is a barbaric thing. And in turn, you know, they view out people that follow Hananja's law, find outsiders barbaric or whatever. So he dismisses him. He's like, he corrects him. He's like, no, I'm a servant of dreams. Pretty much, you've been chosen. Come. He says, take my hand. I will take you to a better place. And Bramante is like, nah, bruh. Like, he's like, no. Pretty much, Ihuru cannot, like, fathom why Bramante does not want to, like, go along with this. And Bramante is like, you know, pretty much their superstitions, like, I don't want you feeding on my dreams. Ihuru pretty much, like, cold-blooded. It's like, yeah, got you. But, you know, all y'all know, when y'all come here, y'all abide by our rules, our laws. So if you're commissioned, and the fact that they're commissioned should tell you something too. But if you're commissioned to get MK'd, then you're finna get MK'd. He says the warning, and I think the verbiage is should be clear. The warning. Why do you have to be warned about something that, like, is inherently good? Like I said, this is all in chapter 1, y'all. So some of what Ihuru is like saying kind of seeps through, and pretty much he says, like, you know, I don't want to die. And Ihuru's like, you know, circle of life. He gives the whole Mufasa, like, what lives must die and all that. But pretty much he's like, oh yeah, and this is I underlined this whole part. But he was like, even my countrymen who claim to love Hananja sometimes fight their fate, but it's the nature of the world that some must die so that others may live. What? I thought we were just shepherding people that were about to die anyways into, like, the land of the dead. Boom. He says, you will die early and unpleasantly if the horror's disease you brought to Gudhari. I really need to learn how to say that. And that's crazy because this is one of my favorite books. Runs this course. But in that time, you might not only suffer, but spread your suffering to others. Why not die in peace and spread life instead? So when I read this time around, I was like, wow. Because I really, like, I read it, but I didn't really catch the meaning of it. So pretty much he's saying, like, it's like the concept of you might kill somebody, so you might do harm, so I'm gonna ensure you do that, like, by making sure you are never able to do it. But pretty much you're not even giving him an opportunity to get cured. He might not have even passed the disease on, but you're just like, you know what? We're not even going to take the risk. Exterminate. So pretty much somebody commissioned his death sentence. So like in my mind now, even though like I know who does it, who commissioned his death? Anyways, Bramante suddenly like, calls him a liar. He was like, doing this gives you pleasure. Iharu's like, no gatherer does this for pleasure. However, literally right before he was there, he was saying like how after every gathering, like, he got a feeling of euphoria. So it's not true. And you know this from the beginning, like it's not true, which kind of sets the tone for Iharu is like a true believer. So like this story is kind of like the journey into his undoing a little bit. Sorry, I spoiled that. And that's not necessarily like a full scope of this book, but that is a part. Part of this novel is about his undoing. Like, faith gets tested. What happens when your faith gets tested? Especially when you learn the things you were led to believe aren't necessarily true. Bramante like scoffs at this. He's like, no gatherer kills for pleasure. Yeah, whatever. He's like, and what of those who do? Are they gatherers no more? There's another name for those, yes. Is that how you tell your lie? So here you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And Ichiro pretty much is like, yo, I'm not going to hear no more of this. And then Bramante is like, well, gatherers are supposed to be comforting. Ichiro is pretty much mad. And he's like, there's little he can do for people who mock his religion. There's no peace for you. So Bramante suddenly is like, they're using you. So Iharu's like, wait, what? And Bramante said, pretty much foreshadows, you will know soon. They'll use you till there's nothing, and there will be no one to comfort you in the end, gatherer. Then he laughs and says, such a shame. Nesha Iharu, such a shame. And this is what, I don't know, Bramante probably could have had a peaceful death, but this is what literally sets everything in motion. This gathering right here. The first gathering, I feel like, was a way to show that there is beauty in what they're doing. And the second gathering is a way to show that even though there is beauty in what they're doing, all things are not as they seem. Iharu's like in such shock that he like leaves and pretty much F's up this gathering. He realizes as soon as it's done, like, yo, what have I done? Like, oh my gosh, this is never supposed to go wrong. Certainly under the supervision of a gatherer of experience. However, I would like to stop here and say that is an interesting statement, because nothing is in any world, like nothing ever just goes right all the time. So clearly there's something to what Bramante was saying, because even though it's never supposed to go wrong, what happens when it does? And this is the story of what happens when gatherings go wrong. As he's like, in his head about it, he notices like a shadow that kind of mirrors him and like kind of just leaps off into like the darkness. And he realizes right here and there that when Bramante had called him that word that I'm not going to try to pronounce again, he wasn't necessarily trying to insult Iharu, but it was a warning of a demon. And that was how chapter 1, this all happens in chapter 1. Yeah. That's why I love this book. I love this book so much. I can't wait. I think I'm gonna vlog as I read this whole book, because I can take this slow and start picking up my other books, but I really want the world to know why I love this book so much. And why, like, I might do this for, like, I think I said I was going to do this, but I might, like, start this now for all N.K. Jemisin's work, because, ooh, sis, I can't wait to read whatever book you come out with next. But anyways, guys, that's all for today. Tune in next time for more of this book talk. N.K. Jemisin, The Killing Moon, with a lady named Dee. Bye.